So we're going to go in 3, 2, 1. Lions Lounge Lockdown, episode 32. A Millwall legend, David Forde. Fordy, thanks for joining us, mate.
Great to be here this morning, mate. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and thanks for having me on. So I've seen the other ones you've been doing over the last weeks and over the months, and keeping people alive during the lockdown. So no, fair play to you. You've absolutely smashed it. Thoroughly enjoyed it.
Cheers, mate. Thanks for that. Yeah, hopefully, I said this could be a long one. There's plenty to get through. A Millwall player, 2008 to 2017. Your Wikipedia says 299 appearances. I'm praying you made that 300th.
That's a lie. That's a lie. It's all wrong. It was 342 appearances and just one shy of the great Brian King. So I would have surpassed him in the most appearances for a goalkeeper, only for one game. So that was one regret that I have that I never got to accomplish. And I still have the gloves. I got my glove maker to actually make me up a special pair of gloves with 342 written on them. And they're still up in my closet.
Still in the wrapper.
Yeah, so if Bart gets injured or if there's, if the boys get struck down with anything that happens, I'm still alive, boys. You know what I mean? I could do a job for one game. There's one good game left of me.
Still got the 90 minutes left just to break that record.
Just one good game. I reckon one good game. Yeah.
So you come to Millwall in 2008. Was it a free transfer was you a free agent, or was it from Cardiff?
Yeah, I came from Cardiff. So I was released at Cardiff. And the tail end of the season before that, I went on loan to Bournemouth as an emergency loan. They were in grave difficulty, and they just managed to survive, and they got me in off the back of an emergency loan. And luckily enough, I got to play against the Millwall, and it was Kenny Jackett's first season in there. Ended up saving a penalty against Chopper, and I met Tony Burns down in the tunnel afterwards. And he just dropped a few things into me ear. And next thing, following season, I found myself down at Millwall. Kenny Jackett gave me a phone call, and it was a no-brainer for me. I was straight down the M4.
What was he like for you, Kenny Jackett, as a manager? First impressions of him?
Yeah, Kenny is a fascinating man. He's a fantastic manager, a great manager. Where Kenny, certainly seeing his development and seeing our development and hearing stories when I first went to the club when he was a coach at QPR. He was meant to be great fun, great banter, great character. And then as he became a manager, he had to, separate himself from that part. He had to become a manager and manage men and manage lads and manage the club and stuff. So on that side of things, I had a great relationship with Kenny up to a certain point. And then like that, things changed, and it was no fault of Kenny's, more so of my own. And things changed on that front, which was certainly interesting, and we may get into as we talk on. But Kenny was a fantastic manager, and a fantastic manager at the time for the club that gave that foundation. And you can see the roots of his work even today when I look at the club, and you can see the roots of what he did at Swansea and places like that. So he always puts in an amazing base, an amazing foundation. And it's like the club at the moment. When I look at the club and I see, from when John Burleson came into the club and where they started in League One and consolidating League One, becoming a top team in League One, and now we're becoming a consolidated top team in the Championship and pushing for that promotion. So I definitely feel, the club is evolving, the chairman and the board and everybody else, and the caliber of players and caliber of manager and everything coming into the club and stuff. And I've always felt that one day Millwall will get to the Premier League, and I definitely think that will happen within the next 3 to 5 years. I think the way things are going at the moment, just sat outside the playoffs, unlucky at the weekend, and it's just great to see that evolution and that sense of development. But I know I've rambled on there and I've gone off onto a different path. But,
no, it's fine, mate. It's fine.
It's just great to see that type of evolution and that type of development with from the board down to the club, and how it's all progressing from whence I first came there in 2008, where we made fundamental changes, where there was fundamental changes made to the training ground, to the canteen, to the gym, to everything. We built and built and built on it. And that was a big part of me going to the club, because I always felt that Millwall as a club had such a huge reputation. It was a notorious reputation. And there was something that just attracted me to that, whether it was the crest or just the nature of the club. I was always drawn to it as a young man, whether it was that Irish connection, And so when that call came in, it was really a no-brainer for me. I was like, right, I'm there, I'm in. I just love the spirit of the club. It seemed to capture everything that I actually was. And when I got to the club, it's no easy task to come into a club like that of its reputation, notorious fans and stuff, and especially as a goalkeeper, it's a difficult job to do in itself. But if you can play in goals at Millwall, I believe you can play in goals anywhere.
It's funny you say that as well, because we've interviewed a lot of people from different eras, and they've all said just the club as a whole. Yes, the club's got the reputation. Yes, the fans have got the reputation, but also just when you're in that club, from the tea lady to the kit man, it's just a real great feeling of togetherness.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Like from the tea ladies, from Adrian the kit man, to Tony Burns, the goalkeeping coach, to Veronica Quinn as the head of catering. She's often an unsung hero within the club, and she thinks she's there over 30 odd years or something like that. Like, and she was the one that appealed to me in terms of, obviously there was the Irish connection, and Kenny Jackett was very, very clever in that. He was like, he's an Irishman, you're an Irishman, ring him. She was like, I haven't got a clue about football. He was like, will he relate to you on some stage, So Veronica was always like an anti-figure to me, and she was always great to my wife and to my children in terms of when they came to the club. And even those things of, as a liaison, that she could bring Millwall and sell Millwall and what it actually is and what it actually isn't. And in terms of what it actually is, and when we first arrived, in terms of trying to get schools sorted and all that my wife was concerned about my young kids, and then for my kids to grow up in Millwall and grow up at the Den and to have those special occasions, well, I suppose it'll only stand to me in years to come when I'm an old man and they start to tell me the stories of what they did and what they got up at the stadiums and what they seen, and more importantly, probably what they heard, So I don't know, to be interested. I'm looking forward to those days.
No doubt, mate. You've got some memories of your own. Let's go back to the very beginning of your Mill career, your debut. Do you remember that? Do you remember what game that was?
I do remember that. Was that Swindon?
Oh, I don't know. So I had Oldham opening day of the season. Would it have been?
Oh, it was Oldham. I thought you remember the first home game. That was away. Oldham was away, wasn't it?
Yeah, Oldham was away.
Oldham away. Yeah, it was a 3-2 or 4-3? 4-3?
4-3, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it was a disaster. It was an absolute disaster. Robbo got sent off. They scored 2 late goals, I think. We started off absolutely cruising. We were in, I think Mark Laird could have scored the same day.
I asked Jimmy the other day about Jimmy Abdul. I said, 4-3 Oldham away. I said, look at 4 of that back 5 there, all Millwall legends, FORDE, Dunn, Craig and Robbo.
Yeah.
As you said earlier, it just shows you how far the club has come.
Yeah, it was an absolute disaster of a debut. And I always remember just walking up to those steps in at Oldham thinking, what's the manager going to say here? And I remember thinking, Jesus, have I actually made the right move here? Am I actually out of my depth here? Am I actually good enough for this level? It was all sorts running through my mind. And then all I was thinking about was, oh my God, I got a debut at the Den next week, and we're just after getting beat 4-3, and there was a few fans chipping on it already, Forge your rubbish, and Jesus, I was thinking, here we go, this is going to be very, very interesting.
Something you just touched on there, you end up playing 56 straight games. You didn't miss one game that season at all. Would it be fair to say that before that, this was sort of your very first run of consistent being a number one at sort of any club you've been at this level?
Yeah, totally. Since I came to the UK, obviously back in Ireland, I was successful in the League of Ireland with Derry City and, the European runs and what we did there back in Ireland. But from a professional aspect in the UK, that was, the first time I became in as a number one. I had a good spell at Cardiff, did well, showed some potential. But like that, I just never got that opportunity. So for me, it was taking that step back to go to Millwall and actually realise, well, Millwall's a championship club here. Great potential, got everything in place, stadium, facilities, training ground, that if this connects and this goes well. And Kenny sold it to me. So I thought, it's a no-brainer for me to get to Millwall and actually establish myself as a number one goalkeeper that consistently I could perform every week. And Tony Burns was amazing in that. What a man, what a leader, what an absolute hero. And he said to me, I said, geez, if I come down in this year and if I get 40 games plus under my belt. And he said, excuse me? And I said, yeah, if I play 40 something games, like most pros or whatever, he says, you're a number one goalkeeper now. He says, you play every game. And that's the approach you got to take. And I just thought, wow, that's amazing. And next thing I realized, I played 150 something consecutive games all in a row. And that was a phenomenal feat. And due to my own stupidity, the end of that came to an unfortunate end. But to play 56 games in my first season, I think I kept 16 or 17 clean sheets, and I never had a season like it neither. I think I saved 5 or 6 penalties, and yeah, so it was certainly an interesting season. And then I think we played Swindon the following game, my second game, and I think after 2 minutes the ball came into the box from the halfway line, and me trying to be the hero, I went chasing it, thinking, I'll come and pluck this one and settle it right down. And all the fans be like, yeah, we got the keeper, he's coming, just pluck the cross out of the sky. And of course I frumble and flap at it, and your man taps it in, and I'm thinking, oh no, here we go. I'm just thinking, bury me here, dig a hole. So yeah, it was an interesting start. And then I think the following game was Huddersfield at home, and I saved I think it was a last minute David Unsworth penalty, bottom right hand corner.
Yeah, he'd have a left foot David Unsworth as well, didn't he?
Yeah, absolute hammer foot. He'd a foot like Paul's hammer.
Mm-hmm. It's fair play to how many actual games you remember, because I've made some notes, and obviously I've researched it, but I'm thinking, you might not remember exact games, exact saves, but it seems like you just remember everything with great detail and great fondness.
Yeah, it's hard not to, because I spent so long trying to get to that point. I spent so many years trying to establish myself as a number one goalkeeper, and to play number one in the UK and test myself at that level. And ultimately, my both ambitions were, I had 3 kind of ambitions, and I set myself 3 goals when I went to Millwall. 1 was to get promoted out of League One. 2 was to get promoted out of the Championship and try to get to play in the Premier League. I would have loved to have done that with Millwall. And 3 was to get to play for Ireland. So I managed 2 out of 3, which, as the good old song says, ain't bad, is it? So
yeah,
it was phenomenal. So I remember a lot of the games, and a lot of I suppose key games I remember. There's a lot of games that have gone past me, and people have asked me to remember that game, and I'm like, I've not got a clue. I'd rather forget it.
We'll say it was a very successful first season. Talk about some of the players in that team. Alan Dunn, who I believe is a very close friend of yours still. Tony Craig, Paul Robinson, Jimmy Abdu, Neil Harris. Some serious legends in there.
Yeah, serious players. We had a phenomenal team. We had, like, as you said, Donny grew up at the club from a young boy. Like, he just absolutely loves Millwall. It just flows through his blood more than anyone. And then you had Paul Robinson, like that, came through the U team and stuff like that. And then Paul was a fantastic captain. And, he wasn't one of the loudest or one of the most vocal, but he was the type of leader that when you got him on the pitch, he'd go through a brick wall. Jesus, he used to put himself into some blocks and get himself into some positions. And you just think that was the type of leader he actually was. And as you said, Tony Craig, TC, was brilliant, very vocal, had a great left foot, and just absolutely adored Millwall as well. So there was a key group of players there, and, it was... Mike Calvin details it and documents it lovely within the family. Tony Frampton, Framo, was a fantastic man, fantastic bloke, and he had a real sense of maturity about him as well, more so than probably all the rest of us. Neil Harris, then, as Neil's Mr. Millwall, I like that as well, for what he's done at the club, to be the top scorer, to managing the club, to getting promotions. And you got to hand it to him. Like, when I first went to the club, he gave me some great insights into the club as well as each individual player. They gave me each their own little insight. And I was wise enough to understand at the time is, right, what can I learn from these individuals? What do I need to take from them? What have they learned down through the years that could actually help me morph into this club and embed myself into the club? And like that, Jimmy Abdu as well. Jimmy signed at the same time as me. As an unknown as well, like from Plymouth. So we were kind of the 2 new boys.
2 great signings. 2 great signings there and Jimmy.
Yeah.
In terms of not just what you did for the club, what we got out appearance-wise as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Jimmy absolutely smashed it. And like that as well, you never heard Jimmy moaning. I never heard. There was times I was actually hoping he'd moan. I'd hoping he'd actually say something. But all you got was the Jimmy smile. And you knew every week that he put in 100% every week. Every week he'd run, and for what he didn't have technically, he had mentally, and you know, his ability to inspire with the level of ground and the level of energy that he used to cover and chip in with some just key goals at key stages and key times was absolutely amazing. And another man that goes, that's actually a Millwall fan, is Gary Alexander.
Yeah.
And Gary was brilliant when I first came to the club. He showed me around, showed me the areas, brought me playing golf, and really bedded me in. So if you're listening to this, Gary, I really appreciate all that help and support you gave me, and I'm still here today. So thanks a million.
Talking about Jimmy Abdou, you said Jimmy never moaned, you wished he did. We interviewed him last week, could have been the week before, and I think he may not have moaned because he was slightly scared of you. I said, what was FORDE like? He said he was the nicest, perfect gentleman. He said, but when he crossed that line, it's a fucking animal.
Yeah, that probably sums it up, you know what I mean? And like that off the pitch, and my wife used to say the same thing to me, because she'd go to games or she'd be in the club afterwards, and people would be just going, they'd be looking at me like half scared, like they're going, Jesus, how do you live with that man? That guy's an absolute lunatic. He's putting his fist through ceilings and ripping off doors and doing all sorts of mad shit, like, you know. And she said, David's an absolute, you know, gentle giant at home. He's just so calm and composed. But there was just something about with me when it came to games and it came to performance and it came to winning and everything else, that once I crossed that white line, it was about that. It was about the win. It was about the victory. It was about the teamwork. It was about the brotherhood. It was about everybody coming together to get that victory, to get that win, or to get a result or whatever else. And you can't describe, you know, it's hard to put it into words, that when you come into the changing room afterwards, that shot of adrenaline, that high, that it was nearly like an addiction, really, you know, when you come into it during the week and you're just high for it after. No more than fans, that the highs we get after games and stuff. But to be on the pitch, to know that you put in the graft first thing in the morning to early in the evening, the level of preparation, the level of discipline that has to go into it and all that, and then all of a sudden it all just comes together, and just to band together like that is a phenomenal experience.
We've seen you lose your shit on the pitch a couple of times. One we'll talk about, definitely a memorable one later on. But did you used to smash the dressing rooms up and stuff like that as well then? Half time, things like that?
It wouldn't have been a regular. It wouldn't be a standard practice. But there's been an odd occurrence where a few things went flying, you know. So there's been a few incidences, but nothing too hectic, and it was never anything personal. And that was always the thing with me, like, you know. And we often used to have those conversations like that. Those 7 key players that we mentioned earlier, we'd have those types of conversations, and we were still pretty old school, because we still came from that old school kind of mentality that you'd have a tear up and then you'd go and you'd have a beer after and you'd forget about it and you'd move on. We never took things personal, and we just kept, right, this is business, this is what we want to do. We all want the same thing. And I think when you get a group of players that all want the same thing, and we all wanted to get promoted, and we all supported each other in our own little special ways, and it just formed something beautiful. And it was such a beautiful year, and to get to Wembley that year and to lose in the final was absolutely heartbreaking. And that's actually one of the shirts I have on my wall here, is the actual, I don't have the winning shirt, I've actually got the losing shirt. Because something stirred in me that day, that it gave me a fire and a drive and a belief to go on and achieve something. And it was such a special day, because I remember going up and I got 2 shirts, and that's the second shirt I gave away. And I went up the steps after we were going up to get the second place or whatever, to say take our silver medals or whatever they were handing out to us. And there was a man lying on the bed, and he was dying, he was passing away. So I gave my shirt to him at the time and stuff, and he was a Millwall fan. He just came for the day that day, and I just thought, here's this man on his deathbed, came to the game, and you know, here I am wondering about football and feeling so upset and disappointed, and this lad's on his last legs, and he managed to get to Wembley to support his club. So I gave him my shirt, and I just thought, wow. So it's a very poignant moment for me, that game, and one that it kicked me on to probably the next level of my career.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said you kept the one from the year that we lost, just to give you that focus and that drive to like, remember that's not happening again, sort of thing. You know what I mean? Yeah,
totally, 100%. Because I'll never forget that feeling. And to be honest, It was an amazing game, considering Gary Alexander's goal is probably one of the best goals I've still ever seen today. And it's probably the best goal I've ever seen at Wembley. And he then to miss the third one, which was the easiest one of all, which was a header in the last minute to make it 3-1. Like Gary, you know, you put it on his head. I've seen him, you know, he'd score 100 of them, not 99. He'd score every one of them, and that one he missed. And then they go down the other end and score 2 goals. So that was a bit of a sucker punch. But when we look back at it, and Kenny always said it, we weren't really ready for the championship. You know, we would have got absolutely mauled the following year in the championship. But it did give us a serious resolve, a serious level of resilience. And Kenny gave us it was like a speech out of Any Given Sunday after the game in Wembley, and he says, we'll be back here again next year. Like, and I was just thinking, Jesus, can we not just go up automatic? Do we have to go through all this? You know what I mean?
We'll happily take the title, Kenny, or take second place. We don't have to come back.
Yeah, 100%. And then we nearly got up second place the following season. It went like between Leeds and ourselves, and it just, we were up for like 10 minutes, and then Leeds, there was a disaster at Bristol Rovers at Leeds. The keeper threw one out to the winger, and he crossed it and they scored, and we had to go into the playoffs again. Like, so there was so many highs and lows.
You've done yourself out of talking about a penalty save, by the way. You've skipped to the final. Let's talk about the semi-final. Leeds at home. Obviously, Neil Harris scores the win. I've got the print behind me there. I don't know if you can see up the top.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I got it up there. Yeah, it's a great print.
The away game. Leeds away. Talk me through that. Big penalty save.
Leeds away, yeah, Jesus. We had this feeling. We just knew we were going to beat Leeds. We always had that feeling, and as a club, I think it's still there today. You just know we're going to beat Leeds. You just know it. For some reason, it was like, I think Morrow scored a couple of goals a few years ago, last minute or something, and you just know, we just had this knowing that we could beat Leeds, and we knew the pressure was all on them, because I think there was 42 or 44,000 at Ellen Road. And the noise out of the place was undescribable. It take the ears off you, like, you know, you nearly had to wear earplugs. So we start the game off, and like that, we're trying to be conservative and protect the lead and everything else. The next thing, we give away a penalty, and Beckford steps up, and I wouldn't mind. It was bittersweet, because a few months earlier, live on Sky, I think they beat us 2-0 the same night, and he gave me, you know, a little elbow into the mush and did a bit of damage to my teeth and my lips and stuff like that, like, you know. And it'd be hard not to, because they're big enough. So he did some damage, and I think he got suspended for some games. And then it just gave me that bit more determination to save that penalty. So it was nice to get down low, bottom right, touch it on. I don't know if they come off the post or just go wide. Yeah, it just gave us that foundation and that base to realise that, right, we've just weathered a massive storm there, an early goal. Then I think they scored shortly after that, and then next thing, Jimmy pops up. Like, I don't think he's ever got inside the 6-yard box since, like, you know, and he nods one in, you know, and just the absolute scenes, people are just going absolutely mental. And unfortunately for me, I had to go and do a drugs test, so I missed most of the celebrations.
I was going to ask you about the celebrations on the pitch afterwards. Missed it?
Yeah, I missed all them. The drugs, as the boys used to call them, the Willy Watchers, came in and absolutely pulled us aside and dragged us into the toilets. Oh. And I had to do a drug. And by the time I came out running out, then thinking all the celebrations were gone and everyone was gone, and I'm like looking around, going, where's everyone? They're all in the changing room. I had to go and put my kit back on and wait for it again.
Well, as we said, we know what happened in the final, a disappointing time, but that second season going back, was that like, you know, the start of 2009, 2010 season, you said, was there a real belief in the team that you could do it again or maybe go one better?
Well, it didn't start off that way. We had an absolute disaster, I think, up till October. We were really struggling. We had a serious hangover, and the effects of losing a playoff like that, even though you might say we weren't ready or whatever, it's still, at the time, you're not really aware of that. It's only when you look back and reflect on it and you evaluate the season. But definitely, it was a real tough opener, because now all of a sudden expectations of the club had risen, expectations of the fans had risen. Now everybody had seen us as a potential threat. You know, the year before they were nearly relegated, Millwall the year before they came, so no one really seen us coming. Now people were prepared for us. They knew what we were about.
Exactly.
So I think what stimulated that and what stirred that season, where we went on to a fantastic run. We were playing MK Dons at home. I think it was a Tuesday night, and we were 2-1 down with a few minutes to go. And MK Dons were going for promotion themselves. They had a really strong side. And next thing, Morrow just picked the ball up. I think he may have been on the left-hand side of the box, cut inside and slots one away. Then he went 2 minutes later, scored another one. We win 3-2 in the last few minutes. And just a sense of belief that came in that, because we only signed Morrison that summer from, I think it was 150 grand from Stevenage.
Yeah.
And even though Morrow came in, he was struggling with his own confidence, because it was a big step up for him as well. He had a lot to prove as well. And I remember a lot of the lads at the time thinking, like, you know, that who is this guy? You know, he talked the talk, but he didn't walk the walk. And we were kind of going, like, you know, right, okay, he's looking at it now, is this a front for who he was or what he was? But getting to know Morrison and getting to know Morrow over the years, and the type of professional he is, and the type of belief that he actually has in his own ability, was actually amazing to watch. And he knew it was just a matter of time of bedding into the club, bedding into the team. We all made him feel welcome and part of it. And then all of a sudden, just that spark, all it takes is just one spark. And that was that night. And Morrow just went, he was gone after that. You know, that was it. And I remember that night clearly. And I don't know if Morrow remembers it, but that's what I felt when his Millwall career hit takeoff.
Yeah, well, you led me on perfectly to my notes, because I said, you know, I was going to say that to help with the promotion push, but he didn't make loads of signings, Kenny Jacob. He made a couple of very notable ones. Steve Morrison, Liam Trotter came in, James Henry came in on loan, and Danny Schofield, who obviously,
great finance.
I think he put the corner in for the winner, didn't he, at Wembley, Schofield? What were those boys like?
It was actually, Scully was a phenomenal player, because what we needed was an actual ball carrier. Sometimes we were under a lot of pressure, and he used to just take so much pressure off. Take off running up the wing and just kill the ball for 2 or 3 minutes, take on a few different players. And he was very creative and very comfortable on the ball. You know, we knew we could give the ball to him, and that he protected and looked after it. Liam Trotter was a sensation as well, just in terms of his size and physical stature.
What was he like as a person? I mean, I liked him. He divides opinion with me, all fans. He just looked very casual on the pitch, shall we say, but he clearly had talent.
Yeah, and that was his nature. That was his nature. And I think a lot of Millwall fans and a lot of people probably expected him to be a lot more aggressive. And that didn't mean he wasn't assertive. You know, he definitely asserted himself in games and take the scruff of the neck and stuff like that. Like, but when it came to, you know, stepping over into, he wasn't one safe for the dark arts, you know. And, so he didn't have the attributes. His ability and his presence to run with the ball, and, you know, to create and set up chances and score some important goals. He was a great player, and like that just wasn't in his nature to go to those extremes. And for Scully, as I mentioned, Scully was top class. James Henry was a character. He was brilliant. He was very confident in his abilities, let's put it that way, when he first came in. And he backed it up, you know, his ability to cross a ball and to whip that ball around someone's, even under extreme pressure, and to get it crossed into play was, and he scored some absolutely cracking goals. Yeah. And he was a great guy. Lenny was funny, like, you know, he was a very funny character. We got great knocks out of him, like, you know. Lenny, we used to call him, And I'm trying to think, who else did you mention there? As we said, Morrison, Morrow was a sensation for Millwall.
You played another 56 times this season. You missed only one game, which was in Johnson's Paint Trophy against Barnet. You picked up 4 bookings as well. There's that little bit of aggression we were talking about along the way.
I think that was 4 bookings in the first month. And I had an uncanny knack. And there's 2 stories I'd like to tell you about. One is about the yellow cards, and one is about that Barnet game, actually, because George Friend came on loan.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can say this online, but he was taking a throw in. And one of the Millwall fans came over, and he comes in at half time, and he turns around to me and he says, "FORDE." He goes, "Millwall fans have to call me a CUNT." Right? And I'm laughing. I said, "Seriously?" I said, "You better get used to it, lad." I said, "Think of it as a term of endearment." Right? So next thing, he takes this throw in and he says, "Hey, George, you know, friend of mine, you." And we're all I'm just like going, but he thought this was like, oh my God, I'm
mind blown.
Yeah. And I was thinking, lad, just look at it. Just look at that. And he found it difficult, I think, because like that, I think George was like, sensitive lad and all that. He found that really, really difficult. So he never really, I don't think he's ever recovered after that. But to be fair, he went on to Middlesbrough and absolutely smashed it a new one, like captained them, had them in the Premier League, and like an absolute athlete. What a player. So that was great. And then you go back to the yellow cards. Yeah, I had an uncanny knack to just bring referees to a point. And like when I just finished at Cambridge, there's a young, fantastic goalkeeper up there at the moment, Dimitar Mitov. And Dimmy used to be watching my games and stuff, and he'd be like smaller crowds and stuff, and he'd be like, how are you getting away with what you're saying to those referees? He said, anyone else is off the pitch, So I used to have some great relationships. I used to have great fun with the referees, actually, before games and after games, and building that rapport with them, building that relationship with them. So I think there was definitely times where I overstepped the boundary and overstepped the mark that I shouldn't have, and I got away with. But it was good fun.
It was. What was I going to ask you next? I was going to ask you next. What was the secret to your success, almost, to keeping your fitness? Because obviously, you must take a few whacks as a goalkeeper. You played pretty much every game straight, as you said, for 3 seasons. What was there anything that was key behind that, or?
Anything key behind that? Yeah, I think it was definitely, I was going through that stage of my physicality, because when I was younger, I was always told I had a lot of potential. One, I was always a late developer, and everything that's come to me in my career always came late. And I was only talking to someone about this morning, where I was like something out of the big movie. I was like Tom Hanks. I woke up one morning 6'4", and I was like, geez, what are these hands, limbs? I was like, Jesus Christ, what's happening here? So, and I would have carried a lot of weight as a kid, So what it was for me was when I got back over to the UK, and after those spells and stuff where I never fully looked after myself, my physicality and the physiology and the fitness and stuff at the time, because that was kind of just starting to happen for me, whether it was alcohol or whether it was food and everything else that goes with it. So when I first went to Millwall, I said, right, I made that conscious decision that I'm going to go down here and I'm going to give it absolutely everything, because it was a last chance saloon for me, really, because I had to go here. I was now 28 years of age. Time was running out, and I had to get my, as I say, I had to get my shit together. So I managed to get in the mornings, get on the exercise bike, do my fat burners, have my bowl of porridge, get back into the gym, do my strength and conditioning, and then go back out and train with Tony Burns, whose sessions at times were nothing short of barbaric. No joking. They were absolutely, they'd murder you, You'd be crawling in your hands and knees after them. You had sand pits on the go. You'd sea legs. Yeah, it was amazing. I've seen goalkeepers come in on trial and they're in bushes getting sick and vomiting and getting nosebleeds and everything. It was insane. It was insane. So, so then I just built up that fitness, and I think it was more as well of my mental strength. And my mentality, that even though there was many times when I was at Millwall that my confidence was always really low. And I think that's what the fans began to like in me eventually, was after getting through those rough periods and those rough times, and coming over those levels of self-doubt and low selves of like esteem and confidence and all that, that I always turned up. I always adopted that attitude that I'd crossed the white line. I never shied away. I never pulled out with an injury, and there was often times I was thinking, Jesus, I'm after letting one go through my legs here. Will I just pull out with a game this week, or will I just say, pull an injury, and all these kind of mad things that go through your head as a footballer. And it never once dawned on me that it was like, right, I have a job to do. I have a jersey, I have a position to keep, and it was about ownership and owning that jersey for me, about being number one. It was so important to me to be number one, because it became about my identity of actually who I was. It actually reinforced my identity of David Forde. It became an absolute part of me. It became totally ingrained in me. So that type of mentality, but where I probably struggled was my emotional health. My mental health and my physical health was in a good space, but emotionally I was on an absolute roller coaster,
Yeah. Well, I've noticed one thing you never ever did was shirk the responsibility of playing, because you used to, at the Vaseline, when you used to take your gloves off at the end and clap, you just like you had another pair of gloves on with all the tape. Did you used to wear a gum shield as well at some points?
No, I never wore a gum shield. That's just me big lips. So I never wore a gum shield. Probably when I talk, it probably sounds like I've got a gum shield in. It's the Irish accent.
Yeah, you
But, yeah,
always had the
wrapping up my
fingers taped
fingers
up and the
before.
Vaseline, didn't you?
Yeah. I definitely had the fingers. I was like Michael Jackson at times. Like, you know what I mean? I had the wrist wrapped up, I had the fingers strapped up. I'll never forget. Actually, I've done so much damage to my fingers and my hands, and especially this baby finger here, I've dislocated it a few times. So we're playing Southend away, and I think it must have been gale force winds. I was taking goal kicks and they were coming back into my hand. That's how strong it was. I've never played in weather or wind like it, but we managed to beat Swindon on the same night. And I made a save down bottom low, and my finger got caught in the turf, and it popped out. So that finger was basically like that.
Yeah.
So Bobby, the physio, Bobby Bassett, came on, and Bobby was such a great character. He was such a great physio, and the boys used to be Bobby Bassett, his name, but the boys used to call him Bobby Basic, and he used to lose his shit, like, he used to freak out. He'd be losing his shit, like, and but he was a great physio, but more importantly, he was a great character, and he was just like a brother or an uncle figure. You go into the medical room, you'd have a chat with him, and he'd just lighten things up and make it a bit of fun and stuff. But he comes running onto the pitch with his little medical bag, and he comes over to me and he's like, right, he's tried to pop it, and I'm like taking deep breaths, and he's like, it wouldn't pop. And I was like, Bobby, I said, get that finger in, like, I'm not breaking my record, like, I'm here, like, just I play with it like this. And he says, no, I said, if I pull this, he said, that could be broken, that could end your career. He said, this isn't good, like, this isn't good. Yeah. So I just looked him in the eyes and I gave him the old stare, and I said, Bobby, I'm going to breathe in, and when I breathe in, you pull on that finger, right, and you better put it back in, right? So he's going, Jesus, so pop it, and all the Millwall fans behind me, and it goes back in, and I'm like, Jesus, that's so sore, but I could barely bend it. So I've come in at half time, and I'm going to Burnsy. I'm going, Burnsy, my finger is an absolute ribbons here. Like, I'm really, really struggling. And he goes, are you, son? Gives a look at it there. Gives a look at it. So I go over like that. And he goes, do you think you need a fitness test? And I says, Jesus, yeah, I think I'm struggling. Like, he says, no, you're all right. It's your baby finger. You don't catch it with your baby finger anyhow. And he said, how does this feel? And he caught my hand. And he gave it the bear grip, and I folded on my knees, and I'm like that down on my knees, and he goes, are you fit? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fit. And he said, well, get out there then, get out for the second half. Brilliant. So out and we played, yeah. So you look back at times like that and you think, oh, amazing times, amazing memories.
So it was a good season, promotion, but there's some other games I want to talk about before we get into the playoffs. West Ham away in the League Cup.
Jesus, what a game. Was that the 2008, the riots and all?
Yeah, that was the carnage one.
That was hardcore. That was a hardcore day, like, and it was one we were so looking forward to, and we were actually praying that we'd actually get that game. And then just the build up to it, you could just driving into the stadium, you just felt something ain't right here. It was like the police took the night off or something, and they just thought, do you know what, we let Millwall and West Ham go at it, like, we let them go at it. But it got to a stage where, right, fair enough, it's you can't condone, that level of violence and stuff like that, but it got to a stage where it was like, right, this is definitely hardcore, this is not right. So whatever was in the air that night, it wasn't good. But and to be part of it and to play in it, for me,
the atmosphere on the pitch, what was that like?
Yeah, it was absolutely electric, because all of a sudden you could just feel it start building down in one of the corners. They started pushing into the stewards, and then where the stewards were trying to hold them back, I think it was pushing the turf up off the pitch. And then all of a sudden there was chairs started to come flying. I'm sat there, and next thing, this boomerang, a chair comes flying around my head and off the other pitch, the other side, and I'm thinking, oh my God, it's absolutely gone off here. But we probably played the best bit of football. We just rose our game to like Premier League standard for that night. And I remember just thinking, geez, we're playing like Real Madrid here, like, Yeah. And I'll never forget it. Chopper scored, great goal. And Dunny I'd say he probably still has nightmares about this. He picked the ball up as right back, ran up the right wing, cut inside, beat about 6 players, and absolutely p-rolled at Robert Green. I think he ran out of legs by the time he got to the box. It probably would have been one of the greatest Millwall goals ever. And then he p-rolls it into Robert Green's hands, where it could have been an amazing goal, an amazing night, but it wasn't to be from. But they came back, scored a couple of goals, and then we got pulled off the pitch 2 or 3 times. We got swarmed by the West Ham fans. But for me, I always felt comfortable in that environment. I felt I don't know, was it the environment itself, or was it the fact that where I grew up, and that level of aggression felt comfortable for me, or whether it was the fact that I was at West Ham and, being part of both clubs at some stage in my career, that I didn't feel threatened in that environment. I just seen it as a huge challenge. It wasn't a threat for me. So it was an amazing night, and we were unlucky to actually lose that night. I think, I think it went into extra time and everything else. And
yeah, did you?
We got beat late on. I think Zavan Hines scored late.
Yeah. Oh, a different type of derby, but again, a game that sticks out in my memory for some reason. Always remember this game: Charlton 4, Millwall 4. Around Christmas time at the Valley.
Christmas or New Year's.
Yeah.
That was epic. The pitch was actually frozen.
Yeah.
That should never, inside the 6-yard box I was like Bambi on ice. And I was wearing my studs, and I was just thinking, wow, this is actually hardcore. And did Scully score the fourth one, or Morrison?
Morrison scored an own goal that day as well, I believe, if I remember.
Did he? Yeah. And I think
Schofield got the last one.
I think we scored late on. I think we scored later on to nick a draw.
Yeah.
And that was like Leeds as well. It's the same thing with Charlton. I always knew playing Charlton, we're going to beat Charlton. And even when we were struggling, even when we were bottom of the league, or even when we'd no confidence, we'd always beat Charlton. we just knew, and there were some great games at the Valley. There's been some great games there. I think we beat them as well, 4-0 at
the same season.
The Den and stuff. Yeah. So there's been some great, and it's a great club. It's a great place to go and play, the Valley. And one like that, I think we beat them 1-0, and we used to bring 4,500 or 5,000 Millwall fans into that shed end. So the atmosphere used to be always bouncing. I remember them having the little blow up dolls or the blow up inflatable little things floating around in the ground and stuff, and just the noise the Millwall fans created, So it was absolutely epic games.
Always a good one, Charlton. Always a good one as well, Palace, but we'll get on to Palace later on. As you said, we scored 4-0 against Charlton in the home game. Scored loads of goals towards back into that season. Tranmere 5-0, Stockport 4-0, Gillingham 4-0. And we hurtled at a great rate of knots towards the playoffs. Again, falling just short, finishing third. Leeds snuck in second. Was that a little bit like, I think 2 points, I think they'd done us by.
Oh, it was actually crazy, because I remember, I'll never forget it, because we played Swindon at home, and we were high in confidence. We went on a serious run from Christmas onwards. I think Boxing Day we got beat by Norwich, and they went up that year. They were really good. They had Wes Houlihan and Grant Holt in the team. They had a fantastic team, and they hockeyed us on Boxing Day up at Carrow Road. And after that game, we just went boom. We went on. I think we only lost maybe 2 or 3 games after that, or 4 games or something, till the end of the season. And we went on an amazing run. So we were in high confidence, and we got Swindon at home that day. And the Den was expecting like that as well. They thought, right, we could be getting automatically promoted. It was 17,500. And when you get when the Den's a full house, it's such a special place, And one of my fondest memories of Millwall is that Monk's chant. And, I'm an avid fan of meditation and practice, and Tibetan mantra and practice, and to hear that chant, and to hear 17,500 people chant that, is some feeling. It just goes absolutely through me. So you could feel that, and you could feel the stadium when it gets into that place and gets into that atmosphere, you're one up. When the team comes out, they're like, we're not winning here today. You just know it, you smell it, you feel it, you sense it. And Millwall players, or their fans, are behind us, and the players are there, and we're all at it. We're all actually on it, and they're special games, and that was one of them. And then we went on. I'll never forget it. All of a sudden, the stadium goes quiet with about 15 minutes to go, and it just went to that eerie silence, and we were like, "What's actually happening here? We're winning." Next thing, it started, the mumbles and the stirs, and it started. Next thing, Joe Gallen's shouting at me, we're up, just kill it. Like, Leeds are getting beat. And then you're hearing it from ball boys, and you're hearing it from lads in the stands. And I'm like, what's happening, lads? And they're all filling me in. There's 15 minutes left. They're still losing. I'm running over, chatting to the lads in the stands. The ball's down the other end. And there's great excitement. And then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, it just goes really quiet again. And you're like, what just happened? And then next it's like, Leeds have scored last minute. And then you see the type of goal that they conceded. Bristol Rovers conceded, where the keeper threw it out. And they were a man down as well and everything in Leeds. You're just thinking you were sick. We were sick in our buckets after watching. But we thought, do you know what? We have to exercise a ghost here, because one, Millwall hadn't won at Wembley, I think. Two, we had such a bad loss the following season. So we had a point to prove, not to the fans or not to anyone else, but to ourselves. And, to do ourselves justice, that we go back. So we had a serious focus. It brought a serious focus and a serious shift in our concentration in terms of what we need to do for the next 2 games. Right, Huddersfield are in the way, and I think we played them away, and we were wearing that AC Milan kit, and it was a bit of a drab game. We got a result. Kenny set up the team right. Don't get beat. We get a result of Huddersfield. They're a really good side, and we get them back down to the Den, because we knew getting back down to the Den with a full house midweek game. Lovely, warm, lovely, beautiful evening, bit of dew on the grass, and the stadium hopping. And that's one of my fondest memories as well, because I'll never forget when I went to Portsmouth on loan in 2017, and Gary Roberts, who's like a fantastic player, and he was playing left wing for Huddersfield at the time. So Robbo had scored, unbelievable header, absolute bullet header into the top. No, Morrow scored the kind of tap in, came off his shins and managed to bundle it into the net, and then to seal it, Morrow scored that header. So the Den was absolutely rocking. And Gary Roberts, I remember them showing it on Sky, it zoomed over and the ball went out of play, and one of the Millwall fans, I don't know, whoever he is, he probably knows who he is, and some hero picked up the ball in one hand and went to him, called him over. And the camera zooms in on Gary Roberts, and he's like this, trying to say no and shake his head, and he's like trying to move his eyes and everything else, and move his chin and move his head, and he's like no, and he wouldn't go over and get the ball. So that just showed you the level of the level of intimidation, and the level of it's all part of the game, it's all part of the process. And it managed that type of atmosphere and that type of environment that night helped us to get over the line and get us to Wembley. And all of a sudden we were back at Wembley again, and when the whistle went, the police horses and the fans, and I think I came off the pitch with just me sloggies on. Me boots got ripped off, me shin pads. So whoever's got me sloggies, they can hand them back,
It's funny because we've interviewed Paul Stevenson on the channel. He used to play for Mill in the late 80s, early 90s. And he was actually assistant manager to Lee Clark at that time at Huddersfield. And he said to me during his interview, obviously, he never got to play at the new Den, but obviously he experienced the old Den. And he said, as soon as we drawn at home, I knew he was done, because we had too many younger players. And he knew they'd sink. They definitely weren't going to swim coming to the Den,
Yeah, 100%. They were definitely a very, very young side, very young team and stuff. And like that, we had to take advantage of it. But we started to have a known. We started to have a belief that it was going to be our year. We had some key players. Darren Moore had come in as well, and he shored up the defence as well. And he was, he was a great figure, because he was been at Millwall. He knows what Millwall was about. And I love playing with Darren. He was a fantastic defender. And like that as well, where we just had a rock solid core group of players and a solid team. We were just a good team all around, that we knew that we'd give any team in that division a good go. And we just wanted to get back to Wembley. And it was Wembley again the following year, which was great, because it wasn't about going to Wembley where you're going as a visitor now and you're on about visiting this great stadium that for me is the Coliseum of modern day football. For me as a young boy growing up watching FA Cup finals, when all they had in telly was an FA Cup final. All they had was one game on a Saturday and Match of the Day and the Saints and Greavesy show and all those kinds of things, where old Wembley and the whole build up to Wembley was, to get to Wembley was absolutely the absolute dream. So we did that the first year. Second year was just right. It's just Wembley. And then there was no club suits. We're probably, I'd say, the first and only team to ever rock up to a final at Wembley with a pair of tracksuits on. And they were booked as well. I swear to God, yeah. A shell suit booked a tracksuit that would cut the nuts clean off you, but that's another story. And so
focus on the game, nothing else matters. Don't worry about the occasion, the suits. Fuck who else matters. We're going there, it's his business.
Yeah, before the season was, I have to get tickets for family, all that kind of thing. I just turned around and I went, do you know what, friends, mates, I said, I have a few tickets here, that's about it. I'm not going chasing anything. I've got my focus. I know I've got a game to win here. And it wasn't about me. I would have loved to have more people at it, but it was just about, I need to look after me here. I need to look after my family. I need to look after the team. I need to get myself in the best possible space. So we got rid of all that stuff and just started to really dial in and what the game was about and the build-up, you know. And so when we rocked up and we knew Swindon were a decent side, we just beaten them a few weeks earlier. And they'd rocked up in their suits. They looked $1 million. You know, they did look well, to be fair. Their red and white ties and their cameras going and everything else. And we just walked out onto the tunnel. I remember walking out the tunnel because I had this thing about coming out last, because I used to like to size up. When I was in goal, I was always the last line of defence. So when I was on the pitch, I could always observe and witness what was going on around me. And I remember just watching, you know, the lads in front of me and watching the players as we line up in the tunnel. And I'm looking across eye to the Swindon players, and they were still that kind of glass-eyed, looking around, thinking, "Wow, this is amazing!" Walking out, and they've got pyrotechnic mad shit going on, like, and you're just going, "Jesus Christ, my eyebrows are getting burnt off me here, and I got to go and play a game." So they were taken in by all that, and I just knew. I think we started off the game really, really well. We could have been probably 2 or 3 goals up. Morrow taps in and we worked on that, you know, Chopper going to the front post, getting a little glance on it. And Robbo sticks his leg out and scores. And I knew once we got 1-0 up, we're like, right, we're hard to beat, because I think we had 20-something clean sheets that year as well. Yeah. And we had, you know, 2 clean sheets in the playoffs. And then that was the third one on that day. And then came to the second half where we knew, right, they're going to come at us. And then we had a young Charlie Austin, which... Yeah. So I always remember it. I can still remember it in slow motion, even if I close my eyes now. Ball come back to Robbo, and he went to play a back pass to me, and he left it shy, like, you know, he left it about 50 yards shy. But anyhow, Charlie Austin ran onto it, and I come running out, and I'm thinking, all right, this is a goal here. And at the time, Wembley was relatively new, and they were all complaining about the turf and the pitch, and you know, the surface isn't good enough and all this kind of thing. But I was delighted afterwards anyway, because I hit a huge bobble and it came off his shin or his knee or something, and he put it about 40 yards wide. And I remember getting the ball afterwards, and my heart was in my mouth. I was really shook to bits after it, and I was thinking, I have to take a goal kick after this, right? And I have to send this ball 70 yards. And my legs were like jelly. They were like sea legs. I was like running up to this ball thinking, right, just make contact. Just at least get it to the halfway line, you know? Yeah. And you know, the whistle blew, and it was just absolute scenes after that. Like, it was such a phenomenal experience, and I think to have 50,000 Millwall fans was truly amazing.
Yeah, for you personally as well, you know, you said, you know, you really felt you had to kickstart your career at Millwall. 2 seasons, not missed a game, back-to-back Wembley appearances and promotion. You must have felt like, yeah, this is sorted now. This is me.
Yeah, I absolutely ate, breathed and slept Millwall, the club. It just got in on me so much, you know, to the point that, you know, it family nearly came second at stages, you know, which wasn't healthy neither, which wasn't good neither, like, you know.
Mrs. isn't watching this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she'll. I'll tell her about it later on. I'll just tell her, yeah, they always came first. And yeah, so like that, it was just so important for me, and like that for my family, why I was actually doing it. That was always my motivation, was from my wife and my kids, and giving them that start, and to give them the best that I could give them. That was always my motivation. And so to finally get into the championship was amazing. Now all of a sudden, can I establish myself in the championship? Because if I want to play for Ireland, right, that's number one sorted out. I've sorted out my fitness and my physicality and my ability, my consistency levels, which is key for a goalkeeper. You know, consistency is key for a keeper. And, you know, because it's perseverance that builds, and it's consistency that keeps. So to keep that position and keep that level, you got to be so consistent. So now I've that sorted. I've got my fitness in line. Now I've ticked that other box of, I've got my goal of getting to the championship with Millwall. And next was, right, it's either Premier League was probably way down the line. It was probably, let's consolidate, let's stay in the division, let's see, can we stay up this year, because we probably had the smallest budget in the division. And with that then came the potential of, right, now I can fundamentally give it a head start to actually get into the Irish team, because I'm playing at championship level. That was kind of minimum requirement at the time. You know, it was either you're playing the Premier League, or minimum requirement to get to play for Ireland was playing the championship. So that became a new focus and a new drive for me, which was amazing, because the joys and the elations were short-lived, especially as me and the type of person that I actually am, because I'm such a high achiever. A lot of the times I often forgot about the journey and experiencing the whole thing at the time. It was always next. It was always the destination. It was always, right, now I got to prepare for next season.
Yeah, exactly.
So even the celebrations were always short-lived with me. It was always like I had that ultimate kind of professional mentality where it was like, next, right, on to the next one. And then with that mentality then came the level of doubt. Was like, geez, am I going to be good enough for the championship? Well, how am I going to fare out here, you know?
You're almost perfectly leading me onto my notes, because this was my next question. You personally as well, did you have the belief that you could make a step up? And also as a team, did you feel that, or we're a new team being promoted, we could struggle? Or did you believe that, no, we deserve to be in the championship now and we'll prove we're good enough?
No, I definitely think we proved we deserved it. And I definitely think we had the momentum as well. And I definitely think we were starting to mature as a group and stuff, because we had all the fundamentals there. You know, we had from the foundation at the back, from myself in the back four, kept a lot of clean sheets. We were solid. We knew what we did to defend and keep that ball out of the net at all costs. We had a good midfield. We knew that we had the legs. We knew that we had the energy. We knew we had the ball carriers. And then up top, we knew we had the goals in Chopper and Morrison and Gary and all the people that chipped in with goals. So we knew we were a good, solid outfit. So for us, it was a case on a team level. But on a personal level, it was a different story as well, because I still had to prove that to myself, that I could play at the championship level. And you know, the synchronicity of it and the serendipity of it, the beauty of it was that the first game was actually against Bristol Rovers away at Ashton Gate, and David James was retiring. So David James was always my hero growing up as a goalkeeper. I love David James, and I got to work with him at West Ham, and now all of a sudden it was like a changing of the guard as such. You know, I walked into Ashton Gate and he sat in the medical room and he sees me coming by, and geez, he lives on coffee. Like, he was always drinking coffee, and he had a cup of coffee in his hand, and he called me in, and he hadn't seen me for nearly, geez, it must have been nearly the best part of 4 or 5 years, 6 years or whatever. And we just sat in and we had a chat, and I thought, geez, what a lovely gesture. Like, I'm talking here to former England #1 here and everything else, and we're just having a chat, and I'm thinking, this is amazing to see that now I feel it's my time and he's coming to the end of his time. So it was like an energetic thing. It was like a handing over of a guard type of thing. Like, so, and we won that day, a great win down. I think it was a 3-0 or 3-1. We won down at Ashton Gate. And
I think we were top of the league after 3 games, wasn't we?
Yeah, we were spat. That's right. Yeah, we were flying, beat Hull and everything. That's right. Yeah. The bonuses didn't kick in till after the 3rd game. That was the only unfortunate thing. The club were delighted.
Also, I was going to say to you, you know, again, from you personally, I said, did you feel you was good enough? But it was also a flawless performance season for you. 50 straight games, didn't miss a game all season.
Yeah, another run of games again. So I was up like the 150 mark, 156 games after that season, and I think it was 21 clean sheets I kept that year in the championship, which is astronomical when I look back at it now. Like, you're thinking, someone that keeps 21 clean sheets that's promotion material, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
And oftentimes I often think that, right, that type and that level of performance that year was amazing to get to that levels within myself, as you said, and then especially considering, could I actually get to that place? But that was just part of, you know, sometimes that bit of doubt, when we start to reframe that in our minds as a way to actually question ourselves, and as a way to look at new things. You know, it's not always a bad thing, but oftentimes we look at it as a bad thing. So it taught me a lot about myself and a lot about what I can actually achieve on the pitch. And then it came an Ireland call came calling just after that as well. Like, so it was an amazing year. You know, it was a phenomenal year. My son was born. And what else was going to say? Yeah, my son was born just before the end of the season, April 30th. And yeah, we just lost out in the playoffs that year. I think we lost out by 2 points or something to Swansea, who eventually went on to get promoted.